Kazakh film presents Health for All. The world is still far from the goal of the World Health Organization outlined 30 years ago to achieve a high level of health for all nations. In 1977, the World Health Organization proclaimed its slogan of Health for All by the year 2000. An important event on the way to achieving this goal was the WHO-UNICEF International Primary Health Care Conference held in Alma-Ata, capital of the Kazakh Republic, on the invitation of the Soviet government. The conference is attended by renowned doctors of the world, including Minister of Health, prominent state and public figures, doctors from 134 countries, representatives of many specialized UN agencies, and other governmental and non-governmental organizations.
In this episode of Charter4Health, we dig into the origins of the People's Health Movement and how its creation reshaped the activism for the right to health. Welcome to Charter4Health, a PHM podcast series on the right to health. Hear the voices and insights of health rights defenders at the forefront of the struggle for health for all from around the world. I am your host, Miguel Garcia, and this is Charter4Health, a podcast series from PHM Global. Follow and share from wherever you are on iVoox or go to our website, phmovement.org. We are the People's Health Movement. Join us in the struggle for health for all. Our guest today is Claudio Schuftan, one of PHM co-founders. Claudio is a medical doctor, he's a pediatrician, he's originally from Chile, and he has lived in Vietnam for several years now. Hello, Claudio. Thank you for accepting this invitation. Welcome to the program.
Hi, Miguel. I'm very happy to be here, and to the listeners of this podcast, I give my greetings.
I want to take this opportunity to ask you about the early days of PHM. From Savar in 2000 to Mar del Plata in 2024, what has changed in the struggle for health for all?
As we say in Spanish, I'm originally from Chile. There's a lot of water that has flown under the bridge. We have, of course, a long history. We are a movement that is now 23 plus years old. And as part of our organization, we hold assemblies, people's health assemblies, approximately every 5 years, because the assembly is the body in our network that has the decision power to make some decisions on policy directions above our steering council, which is a more permanent organizational structure. It's very clear that since the fourth People's Health Assembly, we have had very rough times in the People's Health Assembly because we are intimately related to the suffering of people that increased dramatically during this pandemic, with basically penalizing the kind of populations that historically, traditionally, and ideologically our movement protects or tries to protect. And I don't need to tell the listeners that the injustices that followed the pandemic, not only with the problems with the distribution of vaccines that were hoarded by the rich countries of the world, to the point that they oversupplied themselves, letting some thousands of doses expire and not distributing to the countries that also needed them in the south. But of course there were also a number of human rights violations and violations to the right to health during that period that kept us busy trying to keep up from our places in our homes, because we couldn't go out as many other people during quarantine per persons. But the quarantine was an episode that brought about a number of violations. That did not mean that we let go of other priorities that the movement have and other preoccupations that we have. We are extremely worried about vaccination rates of children for the 6 major pediatric diseases having been totally neglected over the years of the pandemic, and we are trying to play catch up, and we are fighting for that. Basically, this is what our challenges have been in the last 5 years since the last assembly.
Since the late 90s, when the health activists at the time realized that the world was far from achieving health for all in the year 2000, what direction has the discussion on the right to health taken?
As you very well say, our movement started in the late 90s when a number of activists realized that the promise that had been done in the 1980s of health for all by the year 2000 was not going to materialize, something that we could have said already in 1980, because what that meant from 80 to 2000 is that a number of biomedical interventions were basically what countries tried to implement. So health-related interventions. And we know that health is socially determined, politically determined, and we knew that it was almost impossible that this goal of health for all would be attempted. And we are 23 and a half years later, and the goal is very far from happening. And it is no excuse to say, oh, but we had the economic crisis, oh, we had the pandemic, and therefore we had some time lost there. Because even without that, we could probably know, our movement has been hammering this over and over, that if the social determination of health is not attacked, what we call the causes of the causes, health will continue to be bringing us a lot of consequences, and the vast majority of people who work on health in the world try to catch up with the consequences, and they don't get enough involved in tackling the causes of the causes.
Let's take a short break. You're listening to Charter for Health, a PHM podcast. Stay with us.
We are the People's
Health Movement.
PHM brings together health rights activists and organizations from around the world.
For over 2 decades, PHM health defenders have been at the forefront of the struggle for health for all.
We maintain an independent voice without fear or favor.
But now we need you to stand with us.
We need your support to continue our critical and independent intervention on all health matters.
To contribute to our cause, go to our website, phmovement.org, and find out how.
Contribute
And say
Proudly
that you support
Health
For all.
health for all.
health for all.
Health for all.
Health for all.
Follow the discussions on health issues at the World Health Organization on the WHO Tracker website. Through the WHO Tracker, PHM closely follows the work of the World Health Organization and prepares commentaries on agenda items at the WHO governing body meetings. These include background and critical health perspective analysis with recommendations for policymakers and civil society. Visit the WHO Tracker on the People's Health Movement website at phmovement.org. Join us in the struggle for health for all.
Primary health care in the joint report of the WHO and UNICEF was in the center of attention of the plenary sessions. The primary health care program includes a wide range of problems that concern people the world over. Among these are hygienic education, basic sanitary and hygienic measures such as provision of rational nourishment and an adequate supply of drinking water, mother and child health care, vaccinations against infectious diseases, preventive measures, and treatment of the most widespread illnesses.
Where I come from, we say they give you fear so that they can sell you security. Same thing happens with big pharma and big food corporations. They give you something to sell you something else. Where is the discussion going now?
Well, we have said from the very beginning, let's be very clear. Big pharma particularly profits from non-communicable diseases. They are not interested in trying to diminish the incidence of non-communicable diseases like diabetes, hypertension, cancer, because they are selling the drugs, particularly to the people who can afford them, and that is a big part of their business. I'm not even going to mention for big food corporations that are trying to sell breast milk substitutes to poor women who don't have the means and sometimes end up or try to end up spending 50% of their income to be able to buy some powder for their babies, and then they mix the powder with some contaminated water and you end up with children having diarrhea and malnutrition, which is the story of our life. I'm a pediatrician. I grew up with that kind of a problem. So we have to be very much aware that there are vested interests behind all this, that we have been systematically opposed to over the years by organizing our people, creating consciousness, educating politically our membership. And as some of our listeners will probably know, we have an international People's Health University that has been going on since 2006. And we have trained over 1,200 activists, and we teach them during these courses what the political economy of health is all about, so that they understand health in its real context, not the way we only see it, the way we are trying to make everybody understand that health is not an isolated issue or sector within the overall situation of the life where we live.
Let me ask you about the future. What are your dreams and expectations in the years to come in the struggle for health for all?
One thing is my dreams and the other thing is my crystal ball. The listeners will understand that my dreams are more positive than the crystal ball. The world is going an unbelievable amount of turmoil, left, right, up and down, north, south, east, west, with significant changes and a political move of the pendulum to the right. And that would not be worrisome, but it's moving to the far right, which is a rather new phenomenon in the last 20 years. Not that we don't have, or we haven't had far-right movements or governments in the past, but the amount of countries that are swinging the pendulum to that side is very worrisome, and that is, of course, a worry for our movement. There's people who want to privatize healthcare center, who attack public services for being inefficient, but not knowing that the government is very often subsidizing the private sector, and that money, if that money would be put to improve health services and the salaries of our people, who have shown an incredible courage during the pandemic. I mean, we have lost hundreds of health workers that gave their life and their work to save people with this terrible disease that was lethal in a high percentage. So this is a really worrisome problem. But the more the situation gets acute, the more we have the possibility of making people understand, and if you allow me to use foul language, that they are being screwed, and to say this is enough. We will not be taking these things anymore. So organization, mobilization are at the key of this assembly. Mobilization, organizations have been always at the center of our activity of People's Health Movement. I think that in the next few years, we're going to have more and more of our comrades join the street. Now, joining the street is a double-edged sword. We are not only pushing people or asking people to go and protest in the street to protest. They also have to announce, because we have had movements like the Spring Revolution, which was something that we thought was going to change Egypt, and it just fizzled. There was no leadership, there was no programmatic alternative to the situation. And we may very well be in a privileged position as a social movement dedicated to the right to health and the human rights in general, to provide, whenever we can, some leadership and some programmatic way out for these protests that I see growing, not only in Latin America, not only in the country where I'm producing this podcast here, we are all in Argentina, but most probably in a vast majority of countries where people are not going to take it anymore with all these restrictions and economic suffering that they are going through with this situation.
Well, Claudia, I want to thank you for taking some time to speak with us. Thank you very much.
I'm very glad to be here, and the listeners have to understand that everyone that listens, because I assume you have an interest, is very much invited to join us. We are a network of networks with a presence in about over 70 countries. And we are gaining many more members in this assembly, as we do every assembly, because people come who are interested in right to health but have not been members in the past. And our movement is going to continue to grow. And we invite even people who could not be here with us to join us. Thank you very much, Miguel.
We are the People's Health Movement, bringing together health rights activists from around the world. Join us in the struggle for health for all. This episode of Charter for Health was produced by Annelyn de Coquelar, Ana Brachar, and David Verstock. Editing by Luisa Fernanda Viatella. Technical support by James Von Dunen and Edwin Otzin. Special thanks to the World Health Organization Video Archive. My name is Miguel Garcia, and this is Charter for Health, a PHM podcast. You can find much more about PHM and its call to action by logging into our website, phmovement.org. This is a People's Health Movement production.
Follow the discussions on health issues at the World Health Organization on the WHO Tracker website. Through the WHO Tracker, PHM closely follows the work of the World Health Organization and prepares commentaries on agenda items at the WHO governing body meetings. These include background and critical health perspective analysis with recommendations for policymakers and civil society. Visit the WHO Tracker on the People's Health Movement website at phmovement.org. Join us in the struggle for health for all.
Hey everyone, I'm Chiara Bodini, co-editor of the Global Health Watch 6, flagship publication of the People's Health Movement. I am also a producer of the GHW podcast. Listen to the first season of our podcast in English, Spanish, French, and Arabic on iVox. You can also go to our website phmovement.org/GHW-podcast.
The conference president, academician Petrovsky. This conference is very important in outlining concrete ways of fulfilling the sweeping aims of bringing health to all by the year 2000, as adopted by the WHO in 1977. Actually, this means that in an historically short period of time, the inalienable right of every individual to health must be fully guaranteed. I should like to point out that this conference is an important stage in the search for ways of developing the systems and agencies of health protection the most acceptable for the populations and governments of many countries, mainly the developing countries, which would then be in a position to ensure the population of each country with adequate and effective medical aid.